Welcome back, my friends. Jake here. It's that time of the month again. We're going to do another question and answer video. Once a month on the community tab, my YouTube channel, I'll put out a question prompt such as this one. Down below, you can ask me anything about anything, read each other's questions, and like the questions you want me to respond to in a video. The cutoff for this video was 68 likes. Thank you to everyone who left me a question. I wish I could respond to them all. And thank you to everyone who read other questions and thumbs up the good ones. We've got some good questions today. So the top ranked question was from Brendan No 100, 396 likes. Jake, are there any credible options to remove Speaker Johnson, especially after Trump's comments on NATO? Ukraine is in grave danger. If Mini MAGA Mike stays and Trump gets his way? Ironically, yes, there is a very easy way to get rid of Speaker Johnson. What is a motion to vacate? A key sticking point in the GOP speaker battle. This article is from January of 2023, 14 months ago, when the Republicans barely took control of the House of Representatives. In order for them to agree on a Republican Speaker, McCarthy had to give the MAGA extremists this concession, that if any one of them, at any time for any reason, wanted to get rid of McCarthy as Speaker, they could do so. This was stupid of McCarthy to agree to this. This rule previously did not exist. So how does a motion to vacate work? Gates, or any combination of McCarthy critics, could at any time introduce a privileged resolution to declare the office of Speaker vacant, known as a motion to vacate. The introduction alone doesn't guarantee a vote, but it would be like firing a warning shot to the House. And I got the PDF, I looked up the rule, resolution declaring the office of Speaker vacant, and it says it allows any member to do this at any time. So a Democrat can do it. And all we need is 3 or 4 House Republicans to not want Speaker Johnson to be Speaker anymore, and we'll be in gridlock. If Johnson fails on the first vote, he'll probably be disqualified from consideration, and then we'll get some other Republican to become Speaker. I don't think the GOP caucus in the House will ever agree again, so we need Democratic votes. We're going to need 50, 100 House Democrats to work with not crazy House Republicans to agree on a Republican Speaker. I think this is going to happen in the next 2 weeks. And when it comes to Speaker Johnson, I gave up on him probably about 3 weeks ago. I was hoping, as he received intelligence briefings from the Pentagon, he would change his mind, but he's pretty committed to helping Russia, and he lies about absolutely everything, regurgitating whatever the trendy Kremlin propaganda talking point is that day on social media. So I just want to reshare this clip when he compared Ukraine to Afghanistan.
We need to know that Ukraine would not be another Afghanistan. And you see a lot of the American people scratching their heads, having real questions about why that would continue without these appropriate answers.
This is insanely offensive. 2,400 U.S. military personnel lost their lives in Afghanistan fighting. 20,000 service members were wounded. To compare giving 5% of our defense spending to the Ukrainians so they can defend their own country. It's Ukrainian soldiers losing their lives. Mike Johnson will say anything to kill this funding for Ukraine. He's working for the Russians, he's got to go. Next question, what do you think about Trump saying he would encourage Russia to do whatever they want to a NATO ally if they don't pay their fair share? Pretty disgusting if you ask me. So Trump likes using the word pay, payments. They're not making their payments. That's the wrong word. This is spending. This is an allocation. Countries are supposed to allocate tax dollars for their own national defense. The guideline is 2% of their GDP on their own defense spending. A payment, it sounds like it's money going from one group to another. Nobody in NATO is paying money to NATO. Nobody in Europe is paying money to the United States for protection. But that's the language that Trump is going to use in order to manipulate his supporters. And when it comes to NATO, I just want to bring up some history here. At the end of World War II, 1945, the United States had the largest military in the world, 12 million soldiers. The Soviet Union came in second with almost 10 million. But by 1946 or 1947, all of these troops got to go home. They got to return to America, to civilian life, to move to Detroit and open businesses, move to the Midwest. It was a huge industrial boom for the United States, having all these men re-enter the workforce. But the Soviet Union didn't do that. When World War II ended, they kept their 10 million man army under Joseph Stalin for another decade. The reason why is the Soviets, the communists, believed that there would never be peace until every country in the world was communist. Capitalism was the cause of all wars, apparently, according to them. So their goal was to invade every country in the world until every country was communist. And that's how we would have a permanent global peace. So the Soviet Union kept 10 million soldiers for another decade after the war ended. And the only thing that stopped the Soviet Union from sending their tanks to Portugal was NATO. NATO was created in 1949 to stop Soviet aggression, to stop Joseph Stalin from conquering the world. And yes, nuclear weapons helped. If the United States hadn't invented nuclear weapons, we would have had to maintain a larger army. But we had nukes and we had NATO. And that's the only reason why you watching this video at home is not living under Russian communism right now. Because the Soviets would have gone all the way if they thought they could. So for Donald Trump to just spit on our NATO allies, our democratic allies, this is dangerous. This is dangerous rhetoric for a political leader to take this position. Because a lot of people don't think about foreign policy day to day. They rely on our leaders. They rely on our experts to give us good information. And Donald Trump right now is giving his base, tens of millions of Americans, really bad information that in effect is poisoning the well. It's going to make it harder in the future to get these Americans to change their mind once Donald Trump has already planted this very harmful opinion in their head. So my opinion when it comes to the 2024 election is nobody's going to change their mind. Joe Biden got 81 million votes. Donald Trump got 74 million votes. Electorally, it wasn't even close. I don't see anyone changing their minds. People who support Trump are probably going to vote for Trump again. People who hate Trump are going to vote against Trump again. That's primarily how Joe Biden gets his votes. People just don't like Donald Trump. Next question is from James. What was the reaction in America to Trump's comments about refusing to honor Article 5? As a European, I think such language can only serve to encourage Putin to start attacking the rest of us. As a Brit, I also find it deeply concerning that our supposed closest ally could talk about just abandoning us to our enemy and completely insulting to the hundreds of NATO service personnel who died in Afghanistan after America became the first country to invoke Article 5. So after September 11th, the United States became the first and only country ever to invoke Article 5, and NATO participated in our operations in Afghanistan. NATO has always been there for the United States. But to the average American, to the average Trump follower, they don't care. They don't think about the rest of the world very much. Let me give you a statistic. 40% of Americans have never left the United States. Almost half of Americans have never even been to Canada or Mexico, let alone Asia, Europe, Africa, or South America. 11% of Americans have never traveled outside their home state. Imagine being from the state of Wisconsin, my home state, and you go your entire life without even traveling across the border to go to Minnesota or Michigan or Illinois. Like, there's a very large percentage of Americans who just live in a very small world. It's familiar, it's comfortable, it's safe. I think this is human nature to do this in a way. Now, I'm unusual. Given that my father is an immigrant from the Netherlands, I lived and worked in South Korea for 6 years. I just have a lot of understanding and appreciation for other cultures and other countries around the world. I believe that the United States is deeply entangled with what happens in other parts of the world, but some Americans don't. And it's very easy. Let me just show you what our corner of the globe looks like. If you're American, you got Canada to the north, Mexico to the south. But the United States is huge, and it's easy just to get consumed by our own issues and to not worry about parts of the globe that we can't even really feel. So I think this is the honest explanation. And once again, to reiterate this point, it's incredibly dangerous and irresponsible for Trump to speak this way, because he's now calcifying these opinions in the minds of these Americans. He's permanently poisoning their opinion on NATO, on democracy around the world, on authoritarian regimes. This is a huge problem. Next question. I get so frustrated when I watch people like Carlson and Trump speak, and all the comments where I see how blind their supporters are. How can we effectively convince more of the world to support Ukraine? Are there any new different ways to do this? It's nuts that people can't see the evil in the world when it's so blatant. Unfortunately, here in the United States, inertia has set in. We're now in motion for the November election. And Donald Trump will be the nominee. So he sets the tone. He sets the issue and the agenda for the Republican Party. And he has a pro-Russia, anti-democracy narrative, agenda, that his followers will follow because they believe in him. So the only way to stop this, the only way to reverse this, is to defeat Donald Trump in the November election. I've given you my opinion on what the result will be. Everyone still has to do their part in order to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get into office and doesn't destroy NATO and abandon Ukraine and help Russia. So the election's coming up in 264 days, and if it's a landslide, if it's a trouncing, if the Republicans up and down the ballot are severely punished for embracing this dangerous narrative, they'll abandon it. By 2026 or 2028, they won't talk like this. If you talk like this and you lose elections badly, you would hope, you would change your position and stop talking that way. Fingers crossed. But when it comes to the election, I also want to make this point that voters don't vote on foreign policy issues. The famous quote here in American politics is from Bill Clinton in 1992, "It's the economy, stupid." George Bush Sr. in 1992 was up for re-election, and he had just won Gulf War I in 1991. He was the sitting president, Reagan's vice president, and he lost because the economy was bad. So if the economy was doing terrible here in the United States, I would be concerned that Trump could get into office. But the stock market is up 20% over the last year. Inflation is now down to 3% year over year. Unemployment is low, under 4%. That's very good. So as long as the US economy can hold, I don't think Donald Trump will be able to convince enough people to switch their votes. The economy can change in 8 months, but I think as long as people's bank accounts are solid and they're still working, they're not going to vote against Joe Biden. They're probably going to give Joe Biden a second term. Next question, is it time for there to be changes made to how Congress operates? The US legislature these days is quite dysfunctional and can't get things done, such as the aid bill for Ukraine. There comes a point where checks and balances go too far and prevents the US government from doing the right thing, especially when a few politicians acting in bad faith can use the current system to obstruct what needs to be done. The answer is no. Nothing's going to change here in the United States. The framers of the Constitution, people like James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, they deliberately made the US government complicated and dysfunctional so nothing would be done. Almost half the delegates at the Constitutional Convention were slaveholders, people that owned other people, and they were very concerned that their slaves, their money, their economic resources, would be taken away from them. So they wanted to design a government that would protect slavery. Famous in the Constitution was the 3/5 compromise, counting a black person as only being 3/5 of an actual human being for census purposes. Pretty shameful, pretty disgusting. This is US history. Our founders did a lot right, but it was the 1700s, and slavery was still a thing. So in the Constitution, they didn't want it being changed year to year. They wanted to solidify certain protections and make sure that they could always keep their slaves. So to amend the Constitution, you need a 2/3 vote in both chambers of Congress to pass, and then you need 3/4 of the state legislatures to also pass that amendment. So how many times in 240 years has the US Constitution been changed? Not many. And a lot of them were because of the Civil War. We banned alcohol for a while and then repealed it, so those two don't even count. It's really hard to change the Constitution and to change how our government functions. But the good news is there are certain congressional rules that aren't in the Constitution. The filibuster, which requires 60 votes in the Senate for anything to pass, that's not in the Constitution. That's a gentleman's rule in the Senate. And if they want to get rid of it, they can get rid of it. Same with the House and this rule to vacate the chair. That's a rule they just added. That's not in the Constitution. So Congress can change their own internal rules to make the system run better. They don't do that because a lot of people elected to Congress go there deliberately so nothing happens. Not a good answer, but that's the truth. Next question, please talk about Russia's access to Starlink and how that changes the battlefield versus before. Is Musk limiting Ukraine's access to Starlink? I saw a report where Ukrainian signal transmission was minimal, despite good and strong connections. I can't speak about Ukrainian signal strength. I don't know what it's like across the front line. How does Starlink benefit Russia? And it comes to drone operations. If the Russians have Starlink terminals operating in the occupied territories, this is an equalizer effect where they can use and utilize more drones to attack Ukrainian servicemen. So this is a problem, but I don't think Elon cares. It's been obvious to me for a year and a half that Elon does not support Ukraine. Yes, in those first couple weeks, he turned on Starlink and said some nice things. And I think Elon did that to build goodwill. I think he assumed that Russia would win quickly, Ukraine would fall, so there would be no problem turning on Starlink and donating some terminals. It would be good PR for Elon, but Russia would still win. Russia was supposed to win fast. And now this has been dragging out for 2 years, and Elon regrets this. So Elon, especially the last year and a half, has been using his wealth, power, and influence to tip the scale to benefit Russia. This is deplorable. This is offensive. Anyone living in a democracy, you really shouldn't be supporting Elon anymore. And unfortunately, the US government can't really do much because Elon is so powerful and influential. And it comes down to SpaceX. Because the United States military and the United States government uses a private corporation, Elon's corporation, to launch our stuff into space. He's gotten so powerful here in the United States that members of Congress are afraid to investigate him or to drag him into hearings. I think he is supposed to appear before Congress in the next week or two for congressional hearings, but he's so powerful, nobody in our government is going to challenge him. They're afraid of him and what he might do. And this is the rhetoric that Elon's been using lately. Vladimir Putin would be assassinated if he backs out of Ukraine. So Elon is making the argument that Russia has to win this war. If they lose this war, Putin will be killed and removed from office by his own people. I don't see a problem with this, but for some reason, Elon thinks this is a bad thing, that Vladimir Putin would disappear from this world. Next question. Hi Jake, do you think Zelensky's change in the commander-in-chief will make a difference for the Ukrainian military's performance? So 2 weeks ago, General Zaluzhny was replaced by President Zelensky. Ukraine's new army chief is known as the Butcher. Can he beat Russia? The new commander-in-chief, Alexander Syrsky, has a strong history of tactical success, but much hinges on US military aid. So let's start by saying it's normal to replace top military commanders after multiple years of war. Given that all final decisions are theirs, this is an incredibly stressful job where you don't get any time off. So it's normal to replace military leadership. Can I speak at all to the abilities of Alexander Syrsky? And I can't. I don't know that much about the guy. And if I want to speculate for you, why was General Zaluzhny removed? And I don't think there's some kind of political rivalry or animosity between Zelensky and Zaluzhny. I know how well respected General Zaluzhny is. But in war, on the battlefields, there has to be accountability. Given that Ukraine was making so much progress in 2022, liberating the Northern Territory, liberating the Kharkiv region, liberating the Kherson region, there were high expectations for the summer counteroffensive of 2023. And it didn't happen. The goal, obviously, was to make it to Tokmak, or Melitopol, or Berdyansk. And Ukraine went on the offensive in several different vectors, probing for weaknesses, maybe, to commit the rest of their reserves. But I think with General Zaluzhny, as soon as we got pictures and videos of Leopard 2 tanks being blown up, there was this huge outcry on the internet. And he backed off from armored columns advancing. Going on the offensive is going to lead to very high casualty rates. And I don't think General Zaluzhny was willing to tolerate those high casualty rates. This is pure speculation, this is my personal opinion, but I think Zelensky is telling the military, yes, there's going to be high casualty rates, but if we don't make progress, this war will just drag out longer. The longer this war goes, the more people will die inevitably. So yes, in the short term, there will be high casualties going on the offensive. It's going to look terrible on pictures and drone cams. Everyone on the internet is going to be screaming that this is not the correct course of action. So my speculation is that Commander Syrskyi was brought in by Zelensky, maybe to be the fall guy, to order these attacks in which there will be horrendous casualties by the Ukrainians. But they've got to move. They've got to make progress. That's just my working theory. I don't know if it's true. And this article even states what the real factor is. Much hinges on U.S. military aid. So if this military aid package from the United States doesn't pass, who's in charge doesn't matter. Russia will start advancing again because the Ukrainians are out of ammunition. But if the United States can resupply Ukraine with $60 billion worth of military aid, I think Commander Syrskyi is going to order some attacks. And it's going to be ugly to watch. The drone videos, the GoPro videos, there's going to be high casualties, but Ukraine is going to make progress, and they are going to reach the Sea of Azov. I think that's what's coming towards the end of this year and the beginning of 2025 if Russia doesn't give up. Next question, as Musk is supporting Russia with Starlink, wouldn't that fall under the sanctions? Shouldn't he be arrested for this? Kind of a comparable question. Once again, the United States government is dependent on SpaceX to get our stuff into space. And Elon has lodged himself to become this political figure. He sees weakness in the Republican Party because of the division caused by Donald Trump. What is his political ideology that makes him a Republican? I don't know. But he's latched on to one of the two major political parties to make himself as powerful and influential as possible. So to criticize Elon Musk, to investigate Elon Musk, automatically half of Congress is going to come to his defense and accuse the other half of a political witch hunt. Elon is trying to make himself invulnerable politically here in the United States by promoting Republican candidates and getting involved in these domestic political issues like border security. Why does the richest man in the world, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, care about the southern border? The guy has his own private security. I mean, he's the richest man in the world. He's not at threat. I don't see Tim Cook of Apple talking about border security. I don't see the CEO of Microsoft or Mark Zuckerberg talking about these hot political issues because they're not trying to manipulate Congress, which is what Elon is trying to do by getting involved with all these political issues. Sanctions, I guess that was your question. No, I don't think the United States government will ever sanction Elon Musk or his companies. Hi Jake, love your work. Why are we not seeing GLSDB yet? I'm filming this on Wednesday, it'll be published on Saturday, but we got our first video. Ukraine's not going to take pictures and videos, I guess, launching GLSDB, but we've now got our first video from the Russians of debris picked up. So I'll go ahead and play this for you if you haven't already seen it. So this is definitely the guidance kits, the wings on GLSDB. It hits a Russian target in Kremlin in the Luhansk region. So ideally, Ukraine should be getting a couple hundred of these every month. Average that out, it's hopefully 5 or 6 launches a day, hitting Russian targets within 150 kilometers. We're going to get more pictures, we're going to get more videos, but at the time of this recording, This is all we've gotten about GLSDB. Would it be possible for Europe NATO countries to purchase ammunition from the United States to keep supplies going until the US sorts out their $60 billion aid package? I think so. I think behind the scenes this is happening. What happens is countries announce a delivery and then they backfill their own stockpile from the US stockpile. So they wouldn't announce it like, hey, we're buying this artillery from the United States and giving it to Ukraine. They would say, we're giving our own artillery to Ukraine. And then behind the scenes, they're purchasing from the United States to fill their own inventory. I think that's how it's working between the NATO countries. Mike Johnson is a dominionist. Would you explain dominionism to the community? It is very frightening. For my international viewers, how this works in the United States, the farther south you go, generally the more religious people get. And Mike Johnson's from the deep south. He's from Louisiana. So I can't speak about dominionism. I wouldn't pretend to be an authority on this issue. But Mike Johnson has said things in the past that sound objectively crazy to people who aren't deeply religious, I guess. Speaker Mike Johnson draws scrutiny for ties to far-right Christian movements. I don't know if I want to go here. I don't know if I want to be critical of him. I firmly believe that people can believe whatever they want to believe as long as they don't try to impose it on other people. I don't want other people's religious beliefs dictating how I live my life. I think common law and the laws of nature, whatever you want to say, should be our guidance, not obscure religious texts from thousands of years ago. It's my personal belief. I'll just give you the headline. Mike Johnson admits he and his son monitor each other's porn intake in a resurfaced video. So I've seen the clip. It's pretty weird. Mike Johnson's accountability buddy is his teenage son to make sure that he doesn't watch porn. I mean, in their family, they can do whatever they want, but yeah, this is a little weird. But this is where it gets creepy. Mike Johnson claims that God prepared him to be a new Moses. He's seeing his rise to the power of Speaker of the House, the second most powerful man in the United States government, and he claims God speaks to him. When your grandma says that God speaks to her and, she wants to vacation in Florida this year, okay, that's pretty harmless. But when the second most powerful man in government says that God is speaking to him and has told him he will be a new Moses, yeah, that's creepy and alarming, and I don't like it. We're having an election in 8 months. That's when this will be decided. Nothing's going to happen before then. Hi, Jake, my wife and I religiously watch and wait for your videos to get uploaded. We want to thank you for providing the information that you do and supporting Ukraine. How much time do you invest collecting all the information for each video? So what I usually do is spend about 3 or 4 hours the night before researching. I'll show you guys here. I've got like a little note card, and I just go through every one of these sources. So it's the 5 major news sources that I always share: the War Zone, the Moscow Times, the Kyiv Independent, the Kyiv Post, and Euromaidan Press. I then go on Twitter and pour bleach in my eyes, sorting through that website to find interesting clips and interesting facts and information that I can share with you guys. I then have to go to bed, film in the morning, and hope that nothing insane happened in the war zone. But I try and structure it to give you the most relevant information, try and put it in a flowing pattern where maybe I can tell a narrative or share a story. So let's just go through all the time I put in. The night before, about 3 or 4 hours of research on the internet. The morning of, I'll practice for an hour, record for an hour, then edit for an hour, hour and a half. I then have to export the video in 4K, which takes another 30 or 40 minutes. Upload it to YouTube, which takes another 30 or 40 minutes. Make the thumbnail, add the description, the text, and then it goes live as soon as I'm done. Yeah, it's an honest day's work. Easily each 20 to 30 minute video I make is about 10 to 12 hours worth of work, you know, if you count reading comments and responding to comments, but I've got the greatest job in the world. I'll never complain about being a YouTuber. If I need to take a day off, I can take a day off. If I want to sleep in, I'll sleep in. So being my own boss is incredibly liberating. And financially, I'm secure. I'm taken care of. You guys who watch my videos, you're incredible. I'll never be able to convey my deep gratitude for making it on this platform. If I can just, you know, casually talk about this experience, you know, when you ask middle schoolers or high schoolers, what do you want to be when you grow up? YouTuber is now in the top 5. It's like number 1. Every teenager in America knows about Mr. Beast and his story, how he became the largest YouTuber. So did I think when I started this 4 years ago I'd be talking about this terrible war? No. I'm looking forward to this war ending so I can move on to other topics, because this isn't what I want to be talking about. But if I can help people, if I can provide support, if I can make a difference, that gives me purpose, and I'll never stop until Russia is defeated and Ukraine is safe and secure. So that wraps up today's question and answer. Once again, thank you to everyone for absolutely everything. Once again, if you've made it this far, you're a true fan. Absolutely incredible. I appreciate you so much. Till the next video, take care.